Now the possibilities are endless. Right? A halachic issue related to the parsha, and it goes like this. We start with number 1. It's a Rashi this week in Parshas Eikev, a well-known Rashi, and there's lots to discuss. The pasuk says in the beginning, Moshe tells us, "Kol ha-mitzvah," all the mitzvahs, or all the mitzvah that I command you, you should fulfill. Rashi explains, first of all, kipshutai. When it says kol ha-mitzvah, it means like all the mitzvahs. Everything I command you, says Moshe, I want you to fulfill. But then says Rashi, medrash agad, I got to bring a medrash over here. Because why didn't Moshe say kol ha-mitzvahs? By saying kol ha-mitzvah, it sounds like the entire commandment in the singular. What does that mean? So Papashtas Rashi says, no, it means all the mitzvahs. It means everything I command you. But still, it's a little nagging why Moshe chose the words of kol ha-mitzvah, the entire commandment. So Rashi therefore brings a medrash. Im hischalta b'mitzvah, if you start a mitzvah gemara, so be sure to finish it. Taka, the entire mitzvah in the singular. You do a mitzvah, you do it from A to Z. She'eino nikras ela al shem hagomer. The one who gets credit is the one that finishes it. How do I know? Shenemar, as it says, and you might be familiar with this from Masechta Sotah, where this is brought. Rashi here is quoting from the Tanchuma, the story of Yosef, as atzmas Yosef asher helu b'nei Yisrael miMitzrayim kovru b'Shechem. The pasuk says in Yeshua that the bones of Yosef that the Yidden took out of Egypt, they buried in Shechem. That's what the pasuk says in Yeshua. And that's a big problem, because if you look in Parshas B'Shalach, it says, Vayikach Moshe, Moshe took the bones of Yosef, ki hashpeya hishpiya, because before Yosef passed away, he told his brothers to take an oath. It was a double oath, hashpeya hashpiya. He told his brothers to swear that they would tell their children, they would swear their children, that the Yidden will not leave Egypt without Yosef. And it says Moshe took him. It says clearly in Parshas B'Shalach, Moshe took Yosef. It says in Sefer Yeshua, it was the Yidden that took Yosef out of Mitzrayim. So Rashi asks, "V'haloi Moshe levadoi nisasek behem la'aloisam." It was Moshe alone. The word levadoi is crucial. It was Moshe alone that was involved to take them out of Egypt. Rashi doesn't even quote the pasuk in B'Shalach. He expects us to remember it. So it's a mamash contradiction of psukim. So what's the answer? It says Rashi, Elo, the pshat's like this. Lefi shaloi hispik legomra. Since Moshe Taka, he did 90%. He took Yosef out of Mitzrayim. He took care of him for the 40 years, but he didn't finish it, because ultimately Moshe didn't make it to Eretz Yisrael. Who buried Yosef? Gamru Yisrael. They didn't completed it. They get credit for the entire thing. Nikras al Shmom, it's called on their name. That's the explanation. Rashi's, they say it's from the Tanchuma, but it's also a well-known Gemara in Masechta Sotah. Right, the Gemara asks this contradiction from B'Shalach to Yeshua, who took Moshe's bones, and the answer is the same answer. Moshe did 90%. It was other Yidden that finished it off, and those that finish it get the credit for the entire thing. So it's a very interesting idea. 2 people split the mitzvah. One guy does 90%, 95%. The other guy just does the icing on the cake. He gets credit for the whole thing. And what's the source? Because the pasuk says, Kol ha-mitzvah, do the entire thing. Now, you could ask off the bat, Kol ha-mitzvah means do the entire thing. So if the first guy gets hit on the head because he only did 95%, the second guy only did 5%. How did he do Kol ha-mitzvah? How did he do Kol ha-mitzvah? Like, why are we bashing the guy that started? Why don't we say, don't jump onto the bandwagon of someone else's mitzvah. You got to do the whole thing, because Kol ha-mitzvah. Why don't we speak to the finisher? Okay, and that's an interesting discussion, and it is discussed by some Mefarshim. Now, what this in halacha, before we get to the discussion for today, first I got to tell you the shiur that I'm not giving, and I will give another time. But there's a well-known discussion that, if you're somewhere in the middle of nowhere the first night of Pesach, and you only have half a kazayas of matzah, is there an inyan to have half the kazayas of matzah? You're not getting the full amount anyways. Chatzi shiur b'mitzvahs, doing half the amount by a mitzvah. If you have tefillin with only 3 parshas, is there any inyan in putting it on? Now that's already different. Because we know the Mishnah says in Menachos that the 4 parshas of the Tefillin, the Kaddish Li, etc., all 4 parshas are ma'akiv each other. If you have 3 without the 4th, it's like nothing. It's like on Sukkot taking 3 minim. If you don't have the esrog, take the other 3. That's different than when you have matzah, you still don't have enough of the matzah, right? But then the Shah is a lulav also has to have a shear. What if your lulav doesn't have the full height? Is there an Indian in taking it? Is that similar to half a kazayas of matzah? No. Or maybe it's still different. A lulav which is missing in height is nishkan lulav. Matzah, it's matzah. You just don't have the full kazayas. Well, it's a lulav. It's just missing.
Half a shear.
All right. Anyways, we could argue about that. And it's a big discussion. It's a fascinating thing by many mitzvahs. And this story has a lot to do with it. Because Moshe sweated for 40 years. We're going to see what he did with Yosef's bones for 40 years.
Also the Medrash Rabbah, how he found the bones.
Right, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yes.
Everybody was gathering gold. One guy was getting bones.
Chacham leiv yikach mitzvahs. The pasuk says the wise man takes mitzvahs, and the Medrash Rabbah and the Gemara in Saita said it's Moshe. All the Yidden were gathering.
And he couldn't find it.
Exactly. And he couldn't find it for
Sarah
3 days.
Said, why are you so distressed? He said, let me take you to where it is.
Right, exactly. The Medrash Rabbah says for 3 days Moshe was walking back and forth until Serach bumped into him. The Gemara in Saita is mashma that Moshe sought out Serach. And there's an interesting debate between Tosfos and the Tosfos Shantz in Saita. If Moshe sought out Serach or Serach bumped into him. Big difference. If Moshe sought out Serach, why would he look for Serach? Menashe's kids were alive. Machir, Yori were alive. They would know. Why'd you go to Sarah? Yeah, sure. Tosfos Shantz believes vehemently. He says for sure Moshe, if Moshe is looking for anyone, he would have gone to Menashe's kids. It must be he didn't go, he tried to do it himself, and then Nebuch, it didn't work. Serach saw him, he was, after 3 days looking, Serach says, what's wrong? And then he told her, and she said, listen, I can help you. Tosfos though says no. Tosfos says he sought her out, Dafkan. Taka, why her and not Menashe's kids? So Tosfos quotes the whole story from the Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer in order to answer this kasha. It says in Pirkei de Rabbi Eliezer that when Moshe came to tell the Jews, God's taking you out, the Yidden were concerned. Maybe he's a false Mashiach. Because 30 years before, when the Bnei Ephraim, we had a shir a couple of years ago, when the Bnei Ephraim left and 30,000 people died, it was a false Mashiach. So they weren't sure if Moshe is credible or not. And the elders, this Canaan, went to Serach, and she told them, what did the man say? And they said, Moshe said something, pakadati. She said, those are the words. No one knew the secret code. If everybody knew it, so the most kunst that Moshe knew it. Only she knew it. People knew that she knew what the code was, but not what the actual code was. And so Tosfos says, since Serach was the one that got the Geula going, exactly, so therefore Moshe knew, we can't leave without Yosef, she's going to be the woman to help us. That's how Tosfos learns. Tosfos Shantz says it anyhow. I once gave a course about...
Put it on the list?
Yeah.
No, you don't have names.
About 10 years ago, I once gave a little course about Serach. Fascinating stuff. Because she's still alive, that's why. Yeah, we're Ashkenazim. Right? The Medrash says there are 9, 10, or 11 people that went to Gan Eden alive. Two women. Bisya, Paro's daughter, and Serach. In fact, there's a Medrash that says that Rabbi Yochanan... Okay,
and Basya, though. My wife's Basya.
So there you go. So... okay, so we have to. All right. It's Sorechim. Maybe that's the difference, Taka. That's why we call it Basi instead of Bisya. Right. Or she was from Egypt. She's a Sfardisha. So we can name after, although she's alive. Serach was Ashkenazi. Anyhow. Basya, the Gemara says in Megillah, she went down to wash. Lirchitz Megillule Beis Havia. Yeah, she was... okay, all right. Let's save this for another time. But there's a Rashi there. The Shagas Ari in his Sefer Tuda Yevon wants to know. Could be that she just became a Ger Toshev. When a guy is makabel on themselves not to serve idols, so they become it's a certain transition, not to be a Ger Tzedek, but a Ger Toshev. And that's how the Shagas Ari learned. But there's a big discussion what happened to Basya. There's a Medrash that said Rabbi Yochanan was once giving shir, and he was discussing Kriyas Yamsuf with his Talmidim. And he told them that each Shevet had their own path, but in between there was the walls were not see-through.
Oh, not
They were translucent. Is that that you couldn't?
Is see-through, I thought.
No, not transparent.
Transparent, right? Whether they were, you couldn't see one from the other. In other words, Rabbi Yochanan was saying each shevet was on their own journey. The Medrash says Serach walks in. She walked into the base Medrash, came down from heaven, and she said, "No, I can't let this." She said, "I was there, and I can tell you that you could see through."
Wow.
Yeah. Just, the Medrash records a story that happened. Fascinating. Now, the students are wondering, is that really Sarah or some woman walking by that just wanted to, Anyhow.
Back to the story that you told of the Rebbe Rashab in the attic, no? He was a child, a lady couldn't have a child, you told the story.
When the Rebbe Marash, and he laughed. The Rebbe Marash. That's right.
What happened?
Yeah.
Okay.
Right, he coughed out the...
Right.
Yeah, okay, yeah. All right, anyway, so let's... that's the story. Fascinating. Anyhow, so there's... so back to our discussion. So Moshe Poshet hat geschwitzt. 40 years, 40 years, he's busy with Yosef's bones. Now, could be Moshe assumed that he would finish the job. Although Rashi in the end of Parshas Shmois already says, before the Yidden left Mitzrayim, when Moshe said, Lama Harayosah, why were you evil towards the people? Hashem told Moshe, Atosira, Moshe, now you're going to see what happens to Paroi. Rashi quotes that Hashem was hinting to Moshe, you're going to see what happens now. You're not going to see what happens to the victory over the 31 kings in Israel. So it sounds like Moshe already knew he ain't going to Eretz Yisrael. And there's a big discussion if Moshe thought he could break that decree. Some Mefarshim learned the decree was only that he wouldn't lead them in as a leader, but he can come in as an individual, like under Yeshua. There's a lot of discussion about that. But either way, it could be Moshe knew he isn't going to finish the mitzvah anyways, but Moshe said, I'll do what I can. Right, exactly, the Nevuah. It could be that he was hoping he could be Mavato the Gzeira, but he was using that to his benefit. There it worked for him to invoke the Gzeira to get himself out of the... or it could be that he thought that once he takes the job... Anyhow... He didn't say Tvi'enu, bring us, bring them. The Marshal says it was Niba v'lo Yoda, they all asked who said lo Yoda, maybe Yoda. Anyhow, it's fine. But if Moshe didn't know that he would if Moshe thought he wasn't going in, he wasn't going to finish the job, but he still said, let me do whatever I can. Do you know what that teaches you? If you have a half a kazayas of matzah, you eat whatever you can. In fact, it's a Rashi also in last week's parsha by the Odei Miklot. There's a mitzvah to separate 6 Odei Miklot. Moshe did 3 of them on the eastern of the Yarden, of the Jordan, in the areas of Reuven, Gad, and Manasseh. Moshe knew he isn't going to do the other 3. And they weren't even effective. The first 3 weren't effective until all 6 were set up, were activated at the same time. Yet Moshe said, if something comes my way, I'm going to do it. It's a similar idea that Moshe said, whatever you're able, mitzvah bal liyadi, I'm going to do. I'm not going to finish it. I'm going to do whatever I can. And these 2 stories last week about the Ari Miklat and this Rashi over here can have a lot to do with the discussion. If you know that you can't finish the mitzvah anyways, should you still do as much as you can? And it's a fascinating thing. Anyhow, but the issue we have today is like this. Really, Moshe Rabbeinu is carrying Yosef's bones for 40 years. Moshe is a Kohen. Moshe is a Kohen. Okay, let's have a look. Let's have a look. We did. Listen, we'll come across that too. We're going to see about 7 or 8 answers about this issue. If Moshe Rabbeinu was a Kohen, what in the world is he doing with Yosef's coffin? So was Moshe Kohen or not? So first we got to look at number 2. It's a Gemara in Zvachim Daf Kuf Beis. The Gemara is going to quote a brayso of 3 opinions of Tanoim. So first the Gemara says something very important. The Gemara says that when it came to Miriam's tzaras, who declared her a Metzora? Aaron was a relative. And the brayso says it can't be Moshe because Moshe was a Zor, is a non-Kohen. It can't be Aaron because he's a relative. It was God. Now look at the Gemara number 2. Katani miyas, but it does say Moshe Zor, that Moshe was a non-Kohen. The Ein Zor Royas Hanagoyim. That brayso says Moshe couldn't pronounce Miriam's tumah because Moshe is a Zor, he's a non-Kohen, he's a Levi, and a Zor can't be Roya than a Goyim. So that brisa seems to indicate Moshe is a non-Kohen, pretty clear. Amar Rav Nachman Bar Yitzchak, it proves nothing. Shiny Maris Negoyim. Moshe could have been a full-fledged Kohen, but he still can't pronounce somebody Tomei as far as Saras. The Aaron or Bon of Ksuvin B'Parsha. When it comes to the Negoyim, it says clearly Aaron and his kids. In other words, not all Kohanim can see Negoyim. You have to be from Aaron's family. What does that mean? Moshe. Or somebody else, in theory, if you would become a Kohen, but if you're not from Aaron's kids, it doesn't work. Says the Gemara, on a specific day, on that day that the Mishkan was set up, on Rosh Chodesh Nisan, a year after they left Mitzrayim, it was exactly a year after the first mitzvah was given. The mitzvah v'chodesh hazeh lochem, the Jewish calendar, was given on the first day of Nisan, 2 weeks before they leave Egypt. Exactly a year later, they set up the Mishkan, and the Brisa says Elisheva was the wife of Adon, the sister of Nachshon, had 5 things to be happy about on that day. Yevam Melech, Yevam, her brother-in-law, Aaron's brother, Moshe is a king. Isha, her husband, Aaron, a Kohen Gadol. Bena, her son, Sgan, a deputy Kohen Gadol. Ben Bena, her grandson, Pinchas Meshuach Muhammad, was anointed to lead the war, like he did against Midian. Achia, her brother, Nachshon, Nasi Shevet, the head of the Shevet. But yet, Va'avela al Shnei Boneh, but on that very day, her 2 sons, Nadav and Avihu, died. Okay, very sad day. I have mixed feelings. So, Frekti Gemor Baktani Mias Yivam Melech. But this Brisa says that Elisheva's brother-in-law Moshe was a king. Melech in he was a king, Kohen Gadol loy, but not a Kohen Gadol. Or Kohen. Says the Gemara, Eima Af Melech. No, it's just one paper. Yeah, plenty of it. Moshe really could have been a Kohen. It could have been a Kohen Gadol too. The Bryce is saying that he was a Melech in contrast to Aaron, who was only Kohen Gadol. So you see, the Gemara is really pushing the idea it could be Moshe was not only a Kohen or Kohen Gadol. So now the Gemara says.
Why do you say Kohen or Kohen Gadol? Why do you think he would be a Kohen Gadol if he's a Kohen?
Okay, so let's say Katanoi says the Gemara. You know what the truth is? It's an old debate of Tanoim. Vayichar af Hashem b'Moshe. Parsha Shmos, when Moshe refuses to take the mission to go to Mitzrayim, the Eibush is angry. So says Rabbi Shul ben Karcha, Shul ben Karcha is the son of Rabbi Akiva.
Son of Rabbi Akiva?
Well, what? Okay, fine. But some Taina, Rabbi Shul ben Karcha, some say, we don't know.
He was away most of the time.
Okay, but he had a daughter. We know he had a daughter.
The pin?
Yeah, exactly. The snake, that story there. And the Shaila is if Yeshua ben Karcha and Shimon ben Karcha as his kids. You see, some say that Rabbi Akiva was called Karcha because he was bald. Yeah. So when Rabbi Yeshua is called Rabbi Yeshua, the son of the bald one, it means the son of Rabbi Akiva.
But maybe one kid.
Could be, yeah.
Not a big family.
L'chayr or not. Right, there's Taisus there. The Shaila is, does Karcha refer to Rabbi Akiva? Ben Azai wants to. Okay, fine. Let's go weiter. So Bishua ben Karcha said, "Kol charoin afshe b'Torah." Whenever it says the Eibush is angry, nerma by roshim, there's a remnant. When the Eibush is angry, there's a punishment. There's a repercussion. V'zeh, but in Parsha Shmos, when Moshe refuses the mission, the Eibush is angry. Why nerma by roshim? Mr. State Gun, it doesn't say something happened. So according to Shub ben Karcha, Moshe received no punishment for his adamant not to receive the Eibush's mission. Rabbi Shimon ben Yochai Omer, no, Av Zeh Nemer Barushim. Oh boy, was there a repercussion, a consequence here. Shenemar, Hashem told him in Shemais, Haloi Aaron Achicha Halevi, your brother Aaron the Levi is going to come greet you. What? Vale Kohen, Aaron's a Kohen. So Hachi Karma, you know what Hashem meant? Ani Amarti, I wanted to say you're a Kohen and he's a Levi. But Achshav, now you are punished. Hu Kohen va'ato Levi, you're no longer a Kohen. So according to Shimon Bar Yochai, Moshe was stripped of his kahuna. Yes. The Chachamim say Moshe was taka kohen, but only for a week. Loin is kayin Moshe elashivus yimei meluyim belvad. Moshe was a kohen. The 7 practice days from the 23rd of Adar until Rosh Chodesh Nisan, in the first year after they left Mitzrayim, there were 7 practice days when Moshe served as the kohen. of all the karbonis, and Aaron and his kids were like the owners of the karbonis. That was practice until the 8th day, which is Rosh Chodesh Nisan, when Aaron takes the mantle. During those 7 days, Moshe was a kohen, and that's it. There is a Medrash Rabbah that says, you know why Moshe was only a kohen 7 days? Because how many days did he stand by the sneh and refuse Hashem's shlichus? 7 days. So Hashem said, okay, you messed me over with the 7, you're going to hear more about the 7. It was a punishment. That,
To be a kohen?
no, the fact that it was stripped from him after 7 days. It sounds funny. It's almost like if Moshe would have held him by the snare for a month, making him crazy, he would have been a kohen for 30 days, right? I know, it sounds like, but that's what the Medrash says. The Yeshaim, another opinion of Tanoim, the Brisa continues, Moshe was always a kohen. Loi paska kuhuna ela mizada shel Moshe. Kuhuna left Moshe's kids, not Moshe himself. Shenemar, o Moshe isha alikim, bonav yikaru al shevet halevi. His children will be subscribed to shevet Levi, but Moshe himself sounds like he was a kohen. And it says Moshe and Aaron b'kohenov. Moshe was a kohen. So there's 3 opinions. B'Shua ben Karch, we don't know exactly what he holds. He just says Moshe was never punished by the burning bush. Okay. But we see Chachamim hold he was a kohen. What?
That he was a kohen, because he wasn't punished.
Right, okay. But the Chachamim said he was a kohen for 7 days. The Yesh Oimim, Moshe was always a kohen. Fine. So here's an interesting thing. If Moshe was a kohen, now what's the idea of being a kohen gadol? According to many, Moshe was allowed to enter the Kodesh Kadoshim whenever he wanted to, in contrast to Aaron.
Only once a year.
Even by Aaron, there's a debate if Aaron could only come in once a year, or if Aaron could come in whenever he wants, as long as he brings the karbonis and Parshas Acharemis. The well-known shit of the Vilna Gaon, and he has all these psukim he derives it from, that the once a year was only in future generations. For Aaron himself, Bezois Yavi Aaron ala Kodesh, as long as he brings those karbonis. Because only at the end of after in Achremis, after it mentions all the details of Aaron's service, it mentions the idea of Yom Kippur. The Vilna Gaon says, because that's for future generations. For Aaron himself, whenever he brought those karbonis, he could come in. But that's for Aaron. Moshe was a step higher. He could b'chlal just come in. Anyhow, so Moshe was perhaps a kohen gadol, perhaps a kohen, or perhaps only for 7 days, and otherwise he was completely stripped. If Moshe was a kohen, which you see many opinions hold, in fact, you see before the Gemara in the beginning was really pushing he was a kohen. The Brisa says he couldn't see tzaras. Tzaras is an exception. The other one about he was only called a king. He was also a king. You see the Gemara is pushing that Moshe was a kohen. So how in the world is he handling Yosef's coffin? So there's another big shaila about Moshe being a kohen, and this is asked by many Rishonim, and that is Moshe and Tzipora. Moshe marries Tzipora. Moshe then divorces Tzipora. How do we know? Because in Parashas Yisro it says Yisro brings back Tzipora achar shiluchel, after she was sent. In the Mechilta, some Tanoim learn the word shiluchel means a divorce, because in Parshas Kisei say when the Torah speaks about divorce, it says the word shiluach.
The Rambam.
Shiluach means divorce l'chera. So if Moshe divorced her and Yisro brings her back, and Moshe is remarrying her,
Moshe remarried?
yeah, sure. And everyone thought they were together.
But after he's separate because he was...
No one knew about it for a year. Af echad lo yada mizeh until Tzipora gila et zeh.
No, but he made kal v'chomer. If Hashem...
Yeah, af echad lo yada mizeh. That was his own personal thing.
So I don't understand.
Hu lo noga eleha.
But he divorced her.
No.
Okay,
Hu pidish mimena. Hu pidish
Parash
mimena.
mina without divorce.
For a whole year, af echad lo yada, hu shamar et hasod, until when Moshe got the 70 new Nevi'im, and Tzipora said, Nebuch for those people, what's going to be with their wives? And Miriam's like, what? And Tzippora's like, yeah, for the last year, because that was a year after Matan Torah. For the last year, Moshe, wasn't touching her, but no one knew about it.
In this week's parsha,
Ato poya moide. But the Gemara said it was Moshe's idea. It was Moshe's idea. Okay. We had one set of shir about Kairach shir. We had a Kairach shir.
Okay.
But whose idea?
How she took her back.
We had a whole shir that, Tosfos famously explains that because Miriam and Aaron harassed Moshe for the fact that he separated from Tzipporah. Right? Once they found out about it, then they harassed Moshe. What do you mean? Hashem told him, "Va'ata poya moedi modi." You stand with me.
So when he
Rabbeinu
divorced
Tam says, "B'derech she'adam roitze leilech boma lichinoisai." Miriam and Aaron said, "Yeah, Hashem told him to do it because he wanted to." But why did he want to? Right? And that was the whole thing. Anyway, what?
So when he divorced her, when he really sent her.
No. There was on his way to Mitzrayim, lechatchila. He meets Aaron. Aaron says, "Who's this? My wife and kids." Aaron says, "Send them away. Don't bring them. There's enough people." So he divorced her then.
This is divorce.
Yeah, that's the only time.
And when he took
And
her
then
back,
Yisro, whenever Yisro came, he brought her back. When Yisro came to the desert, he brought her back. Well, we're going to see. It's very important when he came back. We'll see in a moment. But he brought her back. He brought her back. Moshe remarries.
But was not with her.
But still, he wasn't with her. Who pirish mimena yasod afechad lo yadam is it?
and even after he
Even
took her
Miriam
back,
didn't know for a whole year.
even if he took her back, when he brought her, never relationship.
Well, it depends. If Yisro came before Matan Torah, it could be for a few days they were together.
And it's,
Maybe yeah, maybe not.
Miriam's affliction was about this as well.
That was because they spoke against Moshe Rabbeinu.
That Pirish or
The Pirish. Yeah, Pirish. Yeah. Okay, so let's go. So this is a big shaila. If Moshe was a Kohen, how could he remarry? He remarried her. Ken. That's the shaila. Zeh shaila. He definitely remarried her, and he brought her into her tent and everything. It's just he was Pirish from her. That was a private thing.
It's after Matan Torah.
Zeh talui on Matai. When did Yisro come back?
If it's not Matan Torah.
Okay, we're getting into answers already. Okay, hold on. So let's say some answers. By the way, you should know, the same shaila is asked about Avram, just to throw it in. Rabbi Yosef Engel has Narich Avram Avinu. There's a Medrash Rabbah that says Avram was a Kohen. It says when in Parshas Lech Lecha, after the war of the 4 kings and the 5 kings, when Chaim said, Baruch Avram, he benches Avram, and then he says benches the Eibishter. It says in Medrash Rabbah, Hashem told Chaim, Malkitzedek, who's Chaim, you're benching Avram before you bench me? You're no longer a Kohen, Avram's a Kohen. So Avram became a Kohen. Avram married Hagar. He divorces Hagar. Where did it say he divorced? Well, we know he threw her out of the house. In the Targum, Yonis and Ben Ozil, he says Patra, he says he divorced her with the actual get. Avram, in Parshas Chayesara, marries a woman, Keturah. Who's Keturah? So, okay, the Ibn Ezra said it's a different woman. Rashi, though, learns Keturah is Hagar. So if you put all this together, if you go with the Medrash Rabbah, Avram's a Kohen, and the Targum Yonason that he divorced Hagar, and Hagar is Keturah, how could Avram remarry his divorcee?
Maybe the deal is different if you, in the middle of your life, become a Kohen or you're born a Kohen. Because
Avram became a Kohen before he ever, the war of the 4 and the 5 kings is 75 years old. It's before he, before he married Hagar. I mean, Hagar was there. But Hagar came with them already. But he didn't marry her yet. What? But Avram Shamar Kol Torah Kula. And if Avram was a Kohen, I'm just saying that the Shaila is asked about Avram. It's asked about Moshe. So what are some of the answers about how Moshe married his divorcee? And we'll see if they can apply over here. So Tosfos asked the question. Tosfos asked both of these questions, by the way, on Chumash. Tosfos wants to know about how he remarried his divorcee, and Tosfos wants to know how he was dealing with Yosef's body. Different answers he gives. Tosfos gives 2 answers for each question. Different answers. No, it's not on the paper. Tosfos says about how he married his divorcee. Tosfos gives 1 answer, says Tosfos. When Moshe divorced Tzipporah, he made a condition. If we're ever going to get back together, the divorce is off. So when Yisro brought her back, if we ever get back together, then retroactively there's no divorce.
Any Kohen could do that? What does that mean?
It's one of the conditions. You can make a condition on a get. We discussed that Amram made the Rameh Mipano learned that Amram and Yocheved made the same deal. When Amram divorced her, because of the Gzeir of Pari, all the kids have to be thrown into the Nile, Amram made a condition with her and said, if we get back together, the divorce is off. And that's why Amram was able to remarry his own,
I'm sorry,
even though she married someone in the interim. She married Safan ben Parnach and had Eldad and
married
Meidot.
in this period of time before you take her back?
So we discussed that, because at that time she thought she was an anus, she thought she was divorced. Yeah. She's as far as she knows, she's divorced.
Not allowed after if God forbid somebody divorces his wife, and if she gets married, you can't take her back never, even a regular person.
But if it turns out that she was never divorced, so what's the problem? It's a different
Because
problem
of the condition.
that she was mazana. There's a yesh baya acheret. That if it turns out there was no divorce, then she was mazana.
Okay.
But if she was anusa or a shageges, then it's okay. Now there's lots of. Or if she assumed, So first of all, it could be the condition was made in front of witnesses beforehand, a meidah. Even if she was told about the condition, if she assumes she's never going to go back, it could be enough to consider her an anusa. And we spoke about Dovid and Michal, a similar thing. Anyhow, but let's not get too much off topic. What?
The Kohen can't even.
That's exactly. So that's the word that Moshe divorced her on condition that if we ever get back together, then the divorce will be cancelled retroactive. Tzipora never married someone in the interim. That the issue here is only because Moshe is a Kohen. Moshe was marrying his own divorcee. For a regular person, that's fine, because she didn't get married to someone in the meantime. The problem is he's a Kohen. Answer says Taisus, once Yisro brought her back, it nullified the divorce retroactively. Mm-hmm. That's one answer. That won't help us over here about Atzmas Yosef. By the Chassam Sofer,
What's the answer about the Atzmas Yosef?
Hold on. He gives another answer over there about the divorce, and he says it was before Matan Torah. According to the Machlokes Masechta Zvachim, when Yisro came back, did Yisro in Parshat Yisro, when Yisro came with Tzipora and the kids, was that before Matan Torah or after? Well, assuming it was before Matan Torah, then it's okay. Why? What does it help us? It's before Matan Torah. Didn't Moshe keep the Torah? He says no. Moshe wasn't a Kohen yet. Says Tosfos, Moshe was not appointed as a Kohen until after the Torah was given. What's the chap? The chap's like this. Avraham Avinu is not going to eat treif because this very item one day is going to be usher, right? Or Yankov shouldn't have married two sisters if this thing itself is going to be usher, right? If Moshe was already a Kohen, right? If he was, then you could say, since this very action of remarrying Tzipora one day will be usher, then he shouldn't do it now. But Moshe wasn't yet a Kohen. So it doesn't make sense to say that one day it'll be usher. But one day it'll be usher because then I'll be a Kohen, but I'm not a Kohen now. That's the chap of Tosfos. Makes sense? Yeah. It's a big difference between... You can't say he should... Well, one day, in the future it's going to be usher. That's because in the future, I'm going to become a Kohen. I'll be a different person. The way I am now, in the future, is still going to be okay. Yeah, that's the chap. The way I am now, in the future, will be okay too. That's what Tosfos says. Since it's before Matan Torah, the Ayin Loin is Kohen. He didn't become a Kohen. So that answer we can extrapolate and say here. When did Moshe take the bones of Yosef? They're leaving Mitzrayim, right? They're leaving Egypt. He takes the bones. Then, so at that point, Moshe is not yet a Kohen. So what are you going to ask? Moshe should have kept the Torah, and since he's a Kohen, he knows one day will be forbidden. He's not yet a Kohen. That exact answer will work here. But it'll only work
up until that
point. Until the Torah is given. Where was Yosef's bones kept throughout the 40 years? So I just want to show you something for a second. Look at number 4. This is a comment of the Tosfos Shantz in Saita. Tosfos Shantz was one of the early Baalei Tosfos. Reb Shimshon ben Avraham, they used to call him Shimshon HaGiber. Oh. He lived in Shantz, it's in northeast France. Shimshon HaGiber. And one of the early Baalei Tosfos. And he says like this, Mamash is strange, just look at number 4. The Gemara there says, V'chidarka shalmeis lahalachim ashchina. The Gemara says that when the Yidden would travel in the desert, the Aron of the Shechina and the Aron of Yosef were almost next to each other. Because the Levium traveled in the middle of the camp, right? That's where Moshe was. That's where the coffin of Yosef was. It was right next to the Machane Shechina where the Aron was. And people would ask, why is the human coffin next to the Aron? And the Gemara says, what would the Yidden say? Ki im zeh masha kosav b'zeh, that Yosef lived the life of the Aron.
Which means he's not a...
Hold on. No, but yeah, good. Says Tosas Shans, b'medrash yesh, shesamu atzamas Yosef b'soich ur shel keves. They put Yosef's bones into the skin of a lamb. It sounds like they had the shell of a lamb, the skin of the lamb, nothing inside of it, and they put Yosef's bones inside. V'nichnasa boy ba'oisei ur ruach Chaim. And then the skin became alive. This lamb, right, it was a living lamb. What was inside? There was no lamb chops inside. It was whatever remained from Yosef's body was inside that. V'hainu d'chsiv, it says, until him noyek katson Yosef, the Eibishter leads Yosef like a sheep. Literally, Yosef was walking, Yosef was moving. A fascinating thing. So that means l'chayr Moshe wasn't carrying it. It was going on its own.
Or l'chayr it's alive.
That means while they traveled, Moshe didn't touch it. It went on its own. Look at the Chizkuni in number 5.
It's alive. It's alive. There's definitely no question of tummy.
No, he wasn't alive. The lamb was alive.
Something was alive.
The lamb was alive. The skin was alive.
Okay.
Something's moving there. Something's moving. Look at number 5. This is an interesting Chizkuni. Mamish at the end of Vayechi. The end of Vayechi speaks about Yankov passing away and the fact that his Einiklach are going to carry him. I'm sorry, his children. His children will carry him. Not his Einiklach. Why not his Einiklach? Because Rashi there says, well, the Einiklach, their mothers were Kanani women. Yankov didn't want them the Einiklach touching his body. Says the Chizkuni, v'oid pirish Rashi. Rashi says in Vayechi that Yankov didn't want Levi to carry either. Levi shouldn't carry the coffin of Yankov. Why? Says Rashi, because one day Levi's going to be carrying the Aron. They're going to be carrying the Aron. So frekt the Chizkuni, the ein lahakshitz. Wait a second. If Shevet Levi can't carry Yaakov, so then eich nasa Moshe arona shel Yosef. How did Moshe carry the Aron of Yosef?
Yeah, the one's because...
So the Rebbe, there's a long sikha about this, but let's just see what the Chizkuni answers. Shayu nasas atzmoi. Moshe didn't carry nothing. The coffin carried itself. K'dechsiv noye katson Yosef, the same pasuk, the Eibishter led him like a sheep. V'loy Moshe nasa. Moshe did not carry it. So you see the what?
Same idea?
He's. I don't know. Your guess is as good as mine. But the point is that Moshe didn't carry it. Now here's the thing. That's when the Yidden traveled, this thing was moving on its own. But when they camped, where was it when they camped? It was in the fields or it was in Moshe's tent? The Chaim was in Moshe's tent. Moshe's going to leave him in the field. The Chaim was in Moshe's tent. If it was in Moshe's tent, you have the problem of oil. It's in the same tent, a dead body in the oil. So this may get us out of the issue of Moshe touching it. But the Chaim, when they camped that night, not just that night, most of the time they were in places for years, right? 19 years in Kaddish. For the 19 years they were in Kaddish, where was right outside his tent? Moshe didn't sleep, he's saying. Bechal didn't sleep, so he was shomer. Anyhow, so this is... So far, how many answers do we have? We have a half an answer is all we have. We were taking Tosas' answer that he gave about Moshe remarrying Tzipora, that since before the Torah was given, Moshe wasn't a Kohen yet, so there's no problem. So that explains how Moshe took Yosef out of Mitzrayim. It doesn't explain the 40 years. For the 40 years, if you go with the Chizkuni and Tosas Shans, maybe you'll say he never had to touch it. It moved on its own. But what about the fact that L'chayra at night...
Why you have to put him inside his tent?
Where did he leave it? Outside? I don't know. You can imagine. His own tent.
It's Yosef's tent.
Why, without a shomer? Without a shomer? He's not buried yet. He's not buried. Also, if it's in a body of a lamb, you got to make sure the lamb doesn't run away, right? You know. I don't know. I always imagined it was in Moshe's tent.
Not such a strong shot. I agree with them.
That was. Where did he leave it?
Outside.
It's near.
It's not there like it's old machane. The old machane.
Who built the tent outside? Who put it in the tent outside?
Who put it in the tent? Okay, fine. Okay, good. I thought we had 7 answers. Now we have another answer. Okay, so let's just quickly see what some of the... So, there was a fellow called Dovid Pozner. We don't know much about him. I don't know much about him. He's called Dovid ben Naftali Hertz Pozner, and he put out a sefer a long time ago, not recent times. The sefer that he has, Yalkut Dovid, was printed before the Baal Shem Tov was born. It was printed 7 years before the Baal Shem Tov was born. So you're talking 350 years ago, a while back. And he says like this. He says, he wrote a sefer, Yalkut Dovid on Chumash. It's actually, they reprinted it. It's beautiful. It's very cute. It's a collection of interesting things. It's almost like, if you look at it, you'd think it was written yesterday by a guy in Eretz Yisrael. But he's only quoting people from hundreds of years ago, right? There's no one in the last 350 years ago mentioned there. But it's mamish, cute tidbits on the parsha, cute tiny little vertelach. Very interesting. And there he deals with the issue of how Moshe, he asks, so what's talking the deal Moshe remarrying Tzipporah? So he says, did you forget the Gemara in number 2? The Gemara says in number 2 that even if Moshe is a Kohen, he can't paskin on Saras. Because by Saras, the Torah says Aaron Ubonov, Aaron and Aaron's kids. That's what the Gemara says. So says the Yalkut Dovid, you know what it says about Kohenim not marrying a divorcee? Emer Ela Kohenim Bnei Aaron. It's only Bnei Aaron. It's only Bnei Aaron. Moshe was a Kohen. Doesn't apply to him. Guess what? The Isser of becoming Tomei to dead bodies also was only said to Ela Kohenim Bnei Aaron. So in other words, if Moshe was a Kohen, it means he can go into the Kodesh Kadoshim. He's not a Zor. But all of those prohibitions don't apply to
All
him.
the restrictions basically say
Don't apply to
Aaron
him.
and the sons. Almost everything.
Exactly.
says
So
that.
it's a special, he got only the privilege.
Status.
Yeah, only
Only
the
the
privilege.
privilege,
Exactly.
all this-
Exactly. Yeah.
That's a
So,
Kohen.
so look at number 3 for a second. This really takes us to another interesting sugya.
Has all the keys.
There's no restrictions for
Yeah,
a Kohen.
restrictions.
Hold on, wait. At Yudu Asipur, there was a Yid who was a Kohen who was off the derech and he wanted to marry Geiris, and his Rabbonim tried to speak to him and he wasn't listening. So they sent him to the Rebbe. He went to this years ago. He went to the Rebbe, and he thought the Rebbe would give him a chelik, and the Rebbe told him these words. The Rebbe said that on the street they say that I'm a scholar. They say that I learn. The Rebbe said, but as much as I would learn, I'll never become a Kohen. And the Rebbe spoke to him that as much as the Rebbe would work, unless maybe you kill someone like Pinchas, you become a Kohen, but as much as the Rebbe would work, the Rebbe said, as much as I would try, I'll never become a Kohen. And the Rebbe spoke about how wondrous it is to be a Kohen, and it's something that people want and can never aspire to. And the Rebbe said, and you have it. You have it. You were born into it. And that's all the Rebbe spoke about. And the guy left, and he's talking. He couldn't get it off his mind. Me not marrying a Geyer is not a restriction. I'm a Kohen. And he ended up calling it off and everything, So it's a... And upon him, look at number 3. Wow. Number 3 is a Toisus in Kiddushin Daf Ches. This is a well-known halachic issue. You have a firstborn you need to redeem. Can you give it to a daughter of a Kohen? Can you give the 5 silver pieces to a Bas Kohen? To a Kohenes? Yeah. So the Gemara there says like this, number 3. It's a Gemara in Kiddushin Daf Ches. Rav Kana Shokel Sudra B'Pidyon Aben. Rav Kana, his name was Kana, sounds like he was a Kohen. He would take a handkerchief at a Pidyon Aben. A little handkerchief. And the Gemara says a handkerchief that's not enough. The Gemara says, no, Rav Kana said, for me, a handkerchief is worth 5 silver pieces. Maybe he had a runny nose or silk or whatever.
It's a fancy blend.
Listen, the Gemara says in Brachas, Rav Nachman was a big fan of sneezing. Sneeze was a big, so maybe he had a similar, I don't know. Anyhow, or maybe it was silk or fine. But says Tosfos, the Gemara there is discussing the idea that even something cheap, to certain people, the value can be more. Mashma hoch, it's mashma here that Rav Kana was a Kohen, right? He's he's redeeming people's firstborns.
Last name Cohen.
With a name like Kana. V'teim afrek Tosfos, but in Pesachim it says different. In the end of Perk Elo in Pesachim Daf Mem Tes, mashma was not a Kohen, because Rabbi Yochanan says in Pesachim, a Kohen's daughter should not marry a Yisrael. It's marrying out. The daughter of a Kohen should marry a Kohen. Not a Yisrael. not a Yisrael. He says it's my, and he says the words. He says Ein zivugam oila yofa. He says it's not going to work out well. Rabbi Yochanan says the daughter of a Kayan marries a Yisrael. It's not going to work out well. And not just, and the Gemara there says Rav Kahana said, listen, Ilav the Nesivi Kahant, if I wouldn't have married a Kahanis, loy gelay, I wouldn't have been exiled. Rav Kahana, in the end of Baba Kama, there's a story. Rav Kahana was exiled from Bovel to Eretz Yisrael. He killed someone. You would like him. He killed a Meiser in Bovel. Someone who was threatening. Rav Kahana killed him. And Rav Kahana's teacher, Rav, says, your authority is going to be after you. Better run to Israel. And he ran to Israel, and he was there with Rav Yochanan, a whole interesting story. But the Gemara in Psachim, Rav Kahana says, you know why I suffered that fate that I had to exile? Because I married the daughter of a Kohen, and I'm not a Kohen.
What was the connection? That he was married. Why did he get the guy?
Because Rabbi Yochanan said if the daughter of a Kohen marries a non-Kohen, it's not going to work out well. So Rav Kahana says, yeah, I can tell you. Misfortune. Right. So Rav Kahana says, yeah, I had to run away, maybe from his, I don't know, he was separated from his wife maybe, because I married the daughter of a Kohen, which means he is not a Kohen. Which, by the way, means when Rabbi Yochanan said you can't marry out, that means even if you're going to marry the greatest Talmud Chacham, because the Gemara Rav Kahana was one of the greatest scholars of his day. And it still didn't work out well. You see, it's marrying out. The question of Tosfos is that means Rav Kahana is not a Kohen. So v'yesh loymar, there's two Rav Kahanas. There's two Rav Kahanas, it's not a problem. Inami, answer number 2, yesh loymar, Rav Kahana is taka not a Kohen. So how was he taking Pidyon Abens? Because of his wife was a Kohenes. He took it on behalf of his wife. De b'shvil ishtay hoya lekech. He took it for his wife, as we say in Perek Azroy and Chulin. Rav Kahana ochal b'shvil ishtay.
Which also makes sense why a handkerchief is good. A nice silk handkerchief.
Exactly, he's taking it for her. For her, it's worse. It's a scarf, exactly. The Gemara in Chulin has a whole discussion. There are certain gifts you give to a kohen which are not holy. Reishis Hagez, the beginning of the shearings. Or when you shecht an animal, the zroya, the arm and the cheekbones and the stomach. Right. These are just monetary gifts you give to a kohen.
We gotta eat beef
You can give them to a kohen, and the halach is you can give them to a daughter of a kohen too, even if she's married to a Yisrael, and he can eat it too, because it's not kodesh. It's not kodesh. Tosfos extrapolates, then that means that also by pidyon aben, you can give to a kohenes. Not just that. Even if she's married to a Yisrael, not just that, you can give it to her husband. Now, I will tell you that the Rambam and the Rosh disagree with Tosfos. The Chaim Sofer says that he doesn't, he writes, I don't want to get involved in the debates, I don't want to paskin. But the Chaim Sofer says when he used to shech the animals, he would give the gifts to his brother-in-law who was married to a Kohen. But he says, by Pidyon Aben, I don't want to get involved in the debate. But according to Tosfos, it's an interesting thing. A woman who's a Kohenes who's married to a Yisrael, she can still take Pidyon Aben. She's not eating truma.
No.
But she's a Kohenes.
Wow.
Which means that, so you see, according to this halacha, it's an interesting thing that you can be a part Kohen. You can be a part Kohen for some things, yes, some things not. Anyhow. So upon him, Reb Dovid Pozner says that's Moshe Rabbeinu. He was a Kohen for some things not. None of the prohibitions. He could remarry his divorcee. He could become Tomei to Yosef, etc. Okay, so that's an answer. What are some of the other answers? Right. Yeah. The Chida has a sefer, the Pnei Dovid. And in it, on Parshas B'Shalach, he has a long piece all about this. How Moshe could have dealt with Yosef's Aaron if Moshe Rabbeinu is a Kohen. Assuming he's a Kohen, how could he have done this? And he quotes from Tosfos from the Sefer Imrei Noyam. There's a Sefer where there's many commentaries of Tosfos and Chumash. One is called the Imrei Noyam. And they give two answers. Answer number 1, says Tosfos, you know how Moshe Rabbeinu is dealing with Yosef's coffin? Yosef? He's a tzaddik? There's no tumah? Tosfos. Now, we had a long shir about this over 2 years ago. Went through many opinions that, and not to go over the whole thing again, but the Gemara says in Ksuvos, when Rabbi Yehuda Anasi passed away, on that day, Batla Kedusha or Batla Kahuna. There's different versions. And what does that mean?
Remember that shit? Yeah. There's the sunset.
But it means that the Kohanim were allowed to become Tomei to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi on the day that he died. Taisus there quotes from Reb Chaim Kohen, a student of Rabbeinu Tam, who said, had I been in where Rabbeinu Tam passed away, I would have become Tomei to him. The shaila is, what did he mean? What does Reb Chaim Kohen mean? And why Taka were the Kohanim able to become Tomei to Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi? So there were two views. There's the view of the Paiskim and then the view of the Kabbalists, the mystics. The Paiskim say there's a halacha called that when a Nasi dies, everyone's his relative. Everyone's his relative. Yeah, so that would work for Kohanim, not for Kohen Gadol. Kohen Gadol can't become Tomei to a relative.
Last night's jam. You watched it?
So Kohanim were able to become Tomei to Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi because when a Nasi dies, everyone's his relative. A Kohen becomes Tomei to his relative. Not a Kohen Gadol though. Not a Kohen Gadol. Kohen Kohen Gadol not. And in fact, because the Beis Yosef, the Bach, they understand the Pshat and Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi that way, they all ask Reb Chaim Kohen what gives him the right to paskin that Rabbeinu Tam had this halachic status of the Nasi of the generation to the point that the Kohanim can all be considered his relative. Rabbeinu Tam was a very great man, but he wasn't the centralized. During his life, you had the Rambam, the Ibn Ezra, you had so many big people everywhere. Right? So how are you going to? What?
Last night that Eves declared that was
right.
He first was a Nasi of not the whole world.
And
then he became the Nasi of the world.
It's interesting. The Rebbe also said it could be one
or
or
two.
two.
Speaking about himself, but it's
incredible. The Rebbe said that's the first time I heard there could be one or two Nasi in that sefer.
At some point, first he was Eves first become a Baal.
Same generation, you had the Friedrich Rebbe
and then you continue. And
anyhow,
became the Nasi of the quality.
So if you understand Reb Chaim Kohen like Rabbi Yosef Kaira and the Bach, that he was Pasha Rabbeinu Tam at the din of a Nasi, and all Kohanim were his relatives, and therefore could become Tomei on the day of his passing, well, there's a shaila, then when any big Rav passes away, all Kohanim can say he's the Nasi. Now how do you know where to say that?
By Rabbi there was
Can, but Nasi can. Bevadai. But the shaila is, how could you extrapolate? So come many others who say that's B'chal not Pshat Reb Chaim Kohen. The Pshat is Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi was so holy, his body didn't give off any tumah, and neither did Rabbeinu Tam. And this is what Tosfos says in the Imrei Noyam. Yosef didn't give off any tumah. No tumah. Simple answer. Yeah, very simple. There's a Gemara in Sukkah Daf Chof Hey, the story of the Pesach Sheni in Baal Oischa. Who were those people that said to Moshe Nebuch, we're Tomei, we can't bring the carbon? The Gemara brings a brayso of 3 opinions. One opinion is it was those that were busy carrying Yosef's coffin. Now, B'chal does a shah. What do you mean those? I thought it was Moshe. Rashi said in number 1 it was Moshe Levadei. Who's it talking about? So Rashi says it was Moshe alone was nisasek lahaloisam. Take it out of Egypt. It could be what Rashi means. Moshe took them out of Egypt when he wasn't yet a Kohen. Matan Torah, he becomes a Kohen. He doesn't touch it anymore. He doesn't touch it. And that's why the Shaila that Rashi deals with in number 1 is, it was Faket, it was the Yidden that took care of him for 40 years. The Shaila is, but who took him out of Egypt? It was Moshe. Yet in Sefer Yeshua it says the Yidden took him out of Egypt. So for that we say whoever finishes gets the credit. But Rashi says Moshe Levada involved in lifting them up. But it could be after Matan Torah. But I'm saying the fact that the Gemara says that it was a group of people means that, what do you mean group of people? I thought it was only Moshe. Maybe they switched. When Moshe got the Torah, Moshe's like, I'm a Kohen, I can't do this. He taka switched. That's an innovation. That's an interesting thing. And Rashi's diuk, we're with Madaik in Rashi's words, Lavadoy alone in the lifting that up. Otherwise, he gave it over. And that's why there were a group of people that took over the issue.
But also, but
the only thing is
and bring them. It doesn't mean he touched them.
Okay. No. So who took it out of the river, though? Unless you go like the Chizkuni in number 5, that it always moved by itself.
No, he put the Shem Mforash.
Yeah,
well, according to
it started bubbling.
There was no Shem Mforash. Sarach said he's here, and he said, don't hold up the Bnei Yisrael from leaving.
It started bubbling and then it came up. But who did Moshe actually take it out? But the only thing's like this. If Moshe gave it over to the Yidden after they got the Torah and Moshe became a Kohen, they stayed in the same place for almost a year. When the next year when they brought Pesach Sheni, they were in the same place. So who would have touched it? If Moshe was the only one who touched it until he brought it to Mount Sinai where they camped, so unless you say Moshe had it in his tent, when Moshe got the Torah, he says, someone has to come take it out of my tent. And it was those people that took him out of the tent. I'm just guessing over here. I don't know. But I'm just saying, if you really... you have to really get to the details. But the point is, the Gemara there says there was a group of people, which is an interesting thing. But the issue that the Chida asks is, wait a second. That means they're Tomei. I thought Yosef doesn't give off Tumah. So Taka, there's other opinions of who passed. Some say it was...
What's the answer to that?
Oh, no, so there are other opinions in Masechta Sukkah of who it was. One opinion is that it was random people that became Tomei to a Mace Mitzvah. The guy died, no one buried him. Right. Another opinion, it was Mishol and El Safan who took Nadav and Avihu out of the Mishkan. Right. So but then the Shah is, why did Nadav and Avihu give off Tumah? The Avnei Nezer has a letter. The Avnei Nezer has a tshuva. Somebody asked him about this, and he told him, well, you never learned Tanya? He says in Tanya, and he starts to describe the different types of tzaddikim. The Avnei Nezer, if I remember correctly, I haven't seen this for a decade already, but he says, should have checked it up, I think he says that Nadav and Avihu died, they weren't even 20. The Zohar says they were still young. Yeah. So they weren't yet complete tzaddikim. And therefore they gave off Tumah. And he says to the guy, yeah, you got to learn Tanya. He says, Avnei Nezer. Anyhow, but it's a printed shuvah. But I'll call upon him. One opinion at least says that Yosef gave off Tumah, and but Tosfos says that, the pshat over here with Moshe and Yosef, there was no Tumah. Okay, that's Tosfos gives another answer by us, and Tosfos says by us again. The Chida is quoting from the Imrei Noyam that Tosfos says Moshe never touched Yosef's coffin. Moshe only arranged that other people should do it. Moshe oversaw the journey and the mission. He didn't get his hands dirty. That's what he proposes. Okay, so these are I'm just saying. Didn't touch it. He threw in. Let's say he threw in.
He could.
Let's say he wrote down Alisha. He threw it in, but they didn't touch the coffin. And as far as who hosted in the tent, somebody else hosted in the tent. Moshe oversaw where it should be, but it could be there was a shomer, and it could be it was not in the field, it was in a tent. It wasn't Moshe's tent. Okay, so far we have a couple answers. We have the fact that before Moshe, the Torah was given, Moshe B'chlal wasn't a Kohen. That's what Tosfos says about Moshe remarrying Tzipporah. That helped us here as far as until the Torah was given. After it was given, we saw Moshe may never have touched it, like the Chizkuni says, Tosfos Shans. What about being in the tent? Yeah.
Tumah.
We're going to get there. Okay, we're going to get there in just a moment. We gave another answer from Reb Dovid Pozner.
But he wasn't really a Jew, wasn't he?
Right, we're going to see. Reb Dovid Pozner in the Yalkut Dovid says Moshe Rabbeinu was a Kohen, but not for anything where it says Bnei Aaron. So he can marry a divorcee, he can touch dead bodies. The Chida quotes from Tosfos in the Imrei Noyam two other answers. Hey, Yosef's a tzaddik, there's no tumah. By the way, the Chida goes on to discuss, really, do we halachically accept that? The Chida does. As is known, the Chida in a number of places. But many poskim didn't, so we know even by the Alter Rebbe, right? They made in such a way that the Kohanim should be able to come close without having the issue.
They did do it.
Yeah.
So you did. That's
No. They made sure that the Kohanim wouldn't have a halachic issue. They wouldn't be considered under the same tent. To satisfy the opinions. Yeah. So you're going to say it's to satisfy all opinions. But if it comes to the...
It's also... if they're doing it, they're not going to say themselves, you know what I mean? I'm a tzaddik. I'm free.
No. This was the Alter Rebbe's brother, I think. The Maharil who was involved in it.
In taking care of it.
In making sure that the Kohen should be able to come.
How do they do that? Tell me. What they leave there?
I wasn't there, but apparently not to be under the same.
That
should be
has
open.
To do with the Rebbe's oil too.
But anyways,
it's open. It's open to the.
So
however,
Tuma go doesn't like
no, if you're not under in the same room, under the same canopy.
Yeah, that's a
Well,
whole
people
different
buried
story.
around
Around
it.
Uh-huh.
So they can't go. They have to stand on top of the mountain.
Oh, really? You can't get
Yeah,
it?
but that's for a different reason. Same as the Rambam. There's
Yeah,
people
yeah.
buried all around it. And Rabbi Mittler.
The Shaila is Maris HaMachpelah. We'll get to in just a second. And the Shaila is Cave Rachel. And Yosef, if you ever go to... I don't think it's encouraged to go visit Yosef, right? Not so safe. Anyhow, okay. Let's throw out a couple other answers. Reb Chaim Alpendari. Reb Chaim Alpendari. I mentioned him in the thing, so I got to quote him. Reb Chaim Alpendari. A Sefer Eish Dos. He lived also a while back. He was in Turkey, in Istanbul, Kushta, Constantinople, Istanbul. He was born in about the year 1660. So going back a while. Later on, he became a Rav in Sfas. And he has a Sefer on Chumash, the Eish Dos. And in it, he proposes the following. He believes that Yosef was... he says the following. It was before Matan Torah, yeah? Moshe may have been a Kohen. So what? Moshe should be machmir on himself. Oh, but since in the future Kohen can't touch a dead body, so I shouldn't do it now. Be machmir, you know what's going to happen? You're going to be stuck in Egypt. Because we can't leave without Yosef. Moshe is the only one who can get Yosef out. By the Kabbalists say that Moshe and Yosef share the same soul. Noach, Yosef, and Moshe, right? The Choshes with the Sheis and Yenachem. Oh, there's a medrash that the Arizal speaks about that Noach was given the name Yenachem. Yenachem. The Yud stands for Yosef, Nun Ches is Noach, and the Mem is Moshe.
Moshe Yosef. We call it in the Haftarah.
Yeah. So Yenachem is Yosef, Noach, Moshe. They all share the same soul. That's why Yosef didn't drink wine for many years, to be masakin that Noach got shikr, and then look what happened. And then Moshe came and fixed up also where Noach went wrong. But Moshe and Yosef, their souls are interconnected, and that's why Moshe was the only one that could really save Yosef from Egypt. So says Reb Chaim Alpendari, you take chumras upon yourself, but a chumrah can't lead to a kula, can't lead to a leniency. I'll give you an example. An example, Avraham Avinu didn't get a bris milah till he was 99. Avraham Avinu kept the entire Torah years before then. Why didn't he give himself a bris? So the Rebbe in the Sichos quotes an answer from the Shach HaTorah and others. What do you mean? If Avraham was halachically a ben Noach, so then that first and foremost he has to do the halachas of a goy. One of them is you can't inflict self-harm. You want to have a chumrah that since one day there'll be a mitzvah to give a bris, so I want to do that, but it can't come at the expense of what you have to do. So it says Chaim Alpendari, Moshe was given a command by God to take the Jews out of Egypt. Boy, was he given that command. There was no jokes about that. Moshe knew that Yosef made them swear. You have to keep a promise. Shavuot for sure exists before Matan Torah. The Torah is full of it. Avraham, Eliezer, Shavuot is everywhere. So he said, even if Moshe was a Kohen, he can't start pulling off his own chumras. I can't do it on the expense of what needs to be done. But that would explain why he took Yosef out of Mitzrayim. The Shals during the 40 years, he could have given Yosef to somebody else. We'll still get to the issue about those 40 years.
Why should it?
Right.
There's also mitzvah begadol.
But no. First of all, once the Torah was given, it's already not a hiddur, it's a chiyuv. But at least for before Matan Torah, we'll have this answer. That even if he was a kohen and he should have been machmir, you can't be machmir when it goes against your current obligations. That's the answer that he wants to give. Okay, what else do we have? We'll throw out two more. Okay, some want to suggest Yosef was a meis mitzvah. Since nobody else could get to Yosef, Yosef was a meis mitzvah. Right? And even a Kohen Gadol, right? Even a Kohen Gadol could become Tomei for a meis mitzvah. All right, but then the shaila is, he's a meis mitzvah until when? Until he's buried, right? Until you're buried. Now, he wasn't buried 40 years, but the shaila is, okay, but once the Yid not traveling, someone else could do it. It'll only help us in the beginning. It'll only help us in the beginning. When Moshe had to take him out of the water. What?
You find them and you bring him. Do you have to give him over to someone else, or do you do the whole thing to the end? a kohen.
No, the egla rufa is something that when you find
Mace.
someone that was killed,
Yeah.
someone was killed, so you bury him, and then you deal with the
But
calf.
who deals with it till the end to take the guy to bury it? The kohen himself, or he gives it over
Whoever
to other
finds
people?
him, whoever finds
So
him.
the kohen
Yeah,
continues to do the.
There's dinim. You call out, scream out, come, help! You bury the guy right away. There's a story of the Yerushalmi that Rabbi Akiva says, I once found a dead body, and I picked him up, right, and I schlepped him to a cemetery. I wanted to honor the mace. I schlepped him to the nearby cemetery was still a travel. And he came back, what? Right, he
that the
came
answer?
back and he told his teacher, Rabbi Yeshua, I think, that, you know what I did? I found a dead body. And Yeshua said, he is very harsh words or something, what? Right, it was like maybe you spilled blood or something. Should have buried him right where he was. That's how a Meis Mitzvah works. So this would explain why Moshe took him out of the water. But after that, especially once the Torah is given during the 40 years,
Mace mitzvah.
no, but someone else could do it. No, someone
You
else.
just said
Oh,
he
no.
took him away.
No. You bury him when you find the Meis Mitzvah. If it's a kohen, the way it works,
But he couldn't because
the
he has to
kohen
bury
calls
him.
out. If there's nobody there, you bury him right there. But if you're not
But not
burying
in
him
this
right there
case.
anyways,
He couldn't. He had to bury him in Israel.
because that was Yosef's dying wish.
So it was a Mace mitzvah all the way until then.
I don't know. It's a little. Even when a kohen starts doing it, if people start if
Rambam
people start
says-
coming in the middle, the kohen stops and says, you know what, let somebody else do it.
That's what I was asking. Does he do it to the end, or?
Yeah, I think the
he-
Rambam says you have
he
to-
gives-
Oh,
somebody
that's
else
what you're asking.
takes
Yeah, the
over.
choir. If people come in the middle, you take over. Yeah. Now it happens to be the Rambam and the Ravid have a debate. The Rambam holds that even once a kohen's tamei, every time he continues, he's adding, he's violating further and
What
further.
about the first
The
Rashi?
Ravid
A
holds.
mitzvah goes by the end. When you bury him.
All right, I hear. All right, okay. You can, you're pushing.
If there's someone else, you don't have the mitzvah.
Right. It's hard to imagine that if so many people could do it. Anyhow, but that's
His kids could have done it.
yeah. You got mitzvah b'gdolim, yosem b'ktanim, right? And yeah, exactly. There were people.
The Rambam also holds that you have to be very careful. Even a kohen burying, let's say, your father, it's a mesh mitzvah. You got to get out of the cemetery right away. You can't
Right,
step
because
over other
the
graves. He makes a
Ram
whole
right
point about it.
the Ravid holds that
Once
once
you're
a
there, you
kohen's
can hang out.
tamei, once a kohen's already tamei to a dead body, if he continues to do it, he won't get malchus anymore. Now, does that mean Does that mean that you only don't get malchus, or there's no prohibition at all? That's a big debate. I think we discussed it once. There's a Mishnah Lamelech. That's been a big question for hundreds of years. What exactly is the Ravid's take on it? The Ravid definitely is more lenient than the Rambam. The Shaila is how lenient is he? Anyway, so that's another answer they throw out. Meis mitzvah. I don't know. Some want to say, listen, Yosef was the Nasi. Even if Reb Chaim Kohen meant I would come Tomei to Rabbeinu Tam because he was the Nasi, right? Right? So Yosef was the Nasi. Yosef was the Nasi. Yosef was the king. And the question is, yeah, but wait. That won't help for a Kohen Gadol. Those that say that the Pshat in Rabbi Yehuda HaNasi, a Kohen could become Tomei to him because he's a Nasi, is because the Nasi is your relative. Which Kohen could become Tomei to their relative? A regular Kohen, not a Kohen Gadol. If Moshe is a Kohen Gadol, we won't be able to use that answer. It's not going to help to say Yosef was a Nasi. Anyhow, but we come to the following answer, number 6. This is to Taisus and Baba Basra. The Gemara there says, Rabbano Metzayin Ma'arta, he was traveling around pointing out where there were graves in Eretz Yisrael. It's like when Arizal came to Eretz Yisrael and he walked, he said, here's buried this person, here. Arizal revealed many of the Kvarim. So Rabbano, he was Metzayin Ma'arta, he would walk around pointing out where people were buried. Now, why did he do this? The simple reason is so the Kohanim should know where to avoid. But he came to the Ma'aras HaMachpelah in Hebron. And he walked inside. The Gemara discusses to get the exact measurements of the caves. And then he was going to go on top and mark it out. And the Gemara discusses that he went into the different caves and he met Eliezer there. Says Taiz Mishum Tukasaver, he holds, so there's a printing mistake in this Taiz, about Stoim Tuma Bekas Va'oila, Kedama Bekama Duchti. That if there's maybe if there's no space between the dead body and the roof on top of the dead body, then the tumah will pierce all the way to the sky, and therefore Kohanim walking on top of the Ma'aras HaMachpelah, which is that particular story, would become tamei. Vim Tomer frek Taisus v'ha'ein kivrei oivdei kechavim metamim ba'oil. Wait a second. A goy's kaver does not give off tumah of the oil to be in the same canopy. Mishum de'ein kruyin adam. Right? It says in Parshas Chukas, if an adam passes away, then it's tameh not just by touching or by carrying, but even being in the same oil. But it says adam. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai holds adam only refers to Yidden, not goyim, and therefore goyim don't give off tumah in the oil. So Frek Taisus, if you hold like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, then goyim don't give off tumah of the oil. So the Ovis Marsa Machpelah from before Matan Torah, they should have that din that there's no tumah. Not because they're so holy, but because they should be treated like Oif De Kechavim. Well, Mama should flip. Wait. But the problem is, that's Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. But Vafilu Rabbanon, the rabbis who argue on Rabbi Shimon, now the rabbis argue on Rabbi Shimon. The army and they say everyone's an Adam. Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai found the pasuk in Yechezkel that says Yidden are Adam, but the Chachamim disagree and say no. Metamim ba, the Chachamim hold goyim are metamim in oil just like a Jew. Now, by the who do we paskin like? It's well known. The Rambam holds like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai. Tosfos himself holds like the Chachamim. Tosfos holds that a goyim are metam in a tent. The Rambam holds not, and both opinions are brought in halacha. But says, wait a second, wait. Even the Chacham who hold that a goy gives off tum in the tent, that's only a goy that died after Matan Torah. But mikol makom, but a kever shalifnei adibur, if it's a kever from before God spoke, from before Matan Torah, loy marbelo benazir elo leinyan negia. We added in Masechta Nazir only for touching. It says oy bekever or in a kever. L'rabbis to include a kever shalifnei adibur. The pasuk in Chukah says oy bekever, you touch a dead body, and the Gemara says in Nazir it's adding even a kever from before Matan Torah. Mikra the kosav gabi negia marbi lo hasam. It's from a pasuk that speaks about touching the dead body. We're proving from, which means, says Tosfos, even Chacham who hold the guy dies today gives off tum in the oil. It will not apply to someone from before Matan Torah, because the Gemara Nazir says such a kever. We had to include it from a special pasuk, and that pasuk only talking about touching.
Only oil, but not.
Right. Touching is the problem. Right, touching is the problem.
The body or touching the order.
Okay, that's a good question. The aron itself might be matama, but definitely if you're just walking on top of it, for our discussion.
Why do you say by Yosef that he was holding the aron?
Hold on. So let's. So Tosfos wants to know what's Rabbanah doing in the Maras HaMachpelah. What does he care about Kohanim walking on top? L'chayra, the others won't give off tumah anyhow. Yeah, it's like a misnagdish shah. The chassid would ask, "What's he doing in Maras HaMachpelah?" The others, they died ben ashika, the Eibush kissed them. Right, the Ramban and Rabbeinu Bechaya, the Sefer Achinuch, they all hold if someone dies through the kiss of Hashem, there's no tumah. Tosfos is asking mamish from a halachi, just the opposite, that they're because they're from way back when, they don't give off any tum. So V'yesh loymar, says Tosfos, you know what the answer is? Avram Avinu Nikra Adam. Avram is called Adam. It says, there's a pasuk that says, Ha'adam HaGadol, the great man, and referring to Avram. V'chein Adam Harishon. Adam is also called an Adam.
Yaakov, not Adam.
No, not Yitzchak or Yaakov. No, you have to have a pasuk. Avram, there's a pasuk that says, Ha'adam HaGadol Ba'anakim, and the Chazal say refers to Avram. Ulahachi ein lamato mikra de Adam. That's why they do give off. Adam and Avram give off tum of the tent. Why? Yeah, they're from a caver from before the dibur, right? But there is a pasuk that says even kvarim from way back when give off tumah by touching. Okay, there's no pasuk that says such kvarim give off tumah in the oil. However, once I have Parshas Chukas that says someone who's an Adam gives off tumah in the tent. If that applies by Goyim, that's a debate of Shim Bar Yochai the Chachamim. But it definitely applies to Adam and Avram because they're called Adam. So according to Tosfos, if you go to the Maras Machpelah, Yitzchak and Yankov's not a problem of the oil. It's a problem of Avram and Adam. But wait a second. According to Tosfos, what about Yosef? Yosef's from before the Dibur. He's not called Adam. So according to Tosfos, Yosef gives no tum of the tent. So this answers most of our question. Once Moshe Rabbeinu got the Torah and he became a Kohen, He wasn't touching Yosef anymore. We saw in number 4 and number 5, Yosef was going on his own. Where was Yosef's body? I think it was in Moshe's tent. Then there's oil. No, there isn't. Tosfos holds that whatever from before doesn't give off. Unless you're called Adam. You can't touch it! He didn't have to touch it. He didn't have to touch it. According to the Chizkun, he didn't have to touch it. He touched it when he took it out of the thing. He wasn't a Kohen yet. That's what Tosfos says about Moshe Rabbeinu and the divorcee. He wasn't a Kohen yet.
Or he didn't give off tumah, according to this.
Right.
No, touching is the problem. No, according to Tosfos here, he can't touch. No, touching the box is problem. Yeah. The box is
coffin.
Yeah, the chayra. So he couldn't touch it, but that's fine. When did he touch it? When he wasn't yet a kohen. He wasn't yet a kohen. There's nothing to be machmir. He gets to Torah. He's a kohen. At that point, Yosef's moving on his own. They were in the same tent. Tosfos says in Baba Basra, there's no tomb of the tent for someone that died before Aseret Adibris. Fakert, I'm saying even if he wasn't in the tent, it's fine.
In his tent, in his
Well, he definitely traveled. He was no way. The Gemara says he used to travel with Moshe. Yeah, he traveled. When they traveled, he traveled right next to Moshe. When they camped, I'm saying even if they were in the same tent, we have a good answer. You want to say a different tent? Anyhow, so this is some of the discussion about.
But it's definitely, these are all according to the opinions that don't hold kedusha of a tzaddik.
Yeah, there was one option. Again, Chida quotes from Tosfos that, and he's not the only one. The Ion Yankiv. We said the Ion Yankiv Reisha also passed away about 300 years ago. He also believes that the pshat here is that Yosef wasn't killed through the Malach HaMavis, and therefore there's no tumah. That's what he says. It's a problem because the Gemara in Baba Basra and Daf Yud Zayin counts. No, the Gemara in Baba Basra counts a few people that did not die through the Malach HaMavis. It counts the Ovis and Moshe, Aaron, Miriam. It doesn't count Yosef. So you'll say it's only counting those that we have psukim for, but it could be it applies to more people. The Gemara in Brachos, the Daf Ches says there are hundreds and hundreds of ways to die, and it counts Mrs. Neshika, the kiss of God, as one of the ways, as if it really exists. But did Rabbi Yehuda Hanasi die through the kiss of Hashem?
We can say that
That's
such a people.
I think Rabbeinu Bachaya says,
such a people, Malach HaMavet killed them, like Yosef, a tzaddik.
So it's either that or Mrs.
Only
Neshika.
people.
Right.
Where does the kinoi come? Yosef HaTzadik. Because it's connected. You always say Yosef HaTzadik.
Why is Yosef called tzaddik? We had
Hashem 2-3 times.
in Medrash. It's because Al Michram Bakesef. Yosef is called a tzaddik in Amos. Al Michram Bakesef tzaddik. The brothers sold Yosef and refers to him as tzaddik.
Who else was called that tzaddik?
That's it. Noach.
Shimon
Noach.
HaTzadik.
And that
Okay,
was
but in Tanakh it's just Noach and Yosef.
that was the connection you said before.
Yeah.
Noach.
We have another show. Anyhow, so just quickly just to go through the answers.
Moshe. Tzaddik.
By the way, we're going to see on Yom Kippur when we say that the 10 Arugei Malchus, when they killed Rabbi Shimon ben Gamliel, cut off his head, and Rabbi Shmuel, the Kohen Gadol, picked up his head.
Right, that was in the Shir.
How did he pick up his head? So many Taina, it's because when a Nasi passes away, everyone's his relatives. But Rabbi Shmuel's Kohen Gadol. So it must be.
No Thomas Mace.
Or it could be the voice when a Nasi dies. It's more than just a relative. It could be when a Nasi dies, he's considered like a. When a Nasi dies, there's really two ways to say. One way is that he's everyone's relative, but there's another way to say it. He deserves so much honor that as long as one person is missing, he's still considered a Meis Mitzvah. In other words, the Nasi's honor is so important that the Kohen Gadol needs to be there as well. If the Kohen Gadol's not there, it's like the Nasi's a Meis Mitzvah. He needs the Kohen Gadol to attend to him for his honor. And then it would apply to a Kohen Gadol too. Anyhow, so just to recap, the answers are like this. The truth is, you have to divide between what happened before the Torah was given, how Moshe got the body out of the water, how did he move it to Har Sinai, and then what happened for the next 40 years. For the first part of the story, Bechal Moshe wasn't a Kohen, so there's nothing to be machmir about. He only became a Kohen when he got the Torah. That's what Tosfos is about Moshe remarrying Tzipora. We gave an answer from the Yalkut Dovid, Dovid Pozner, that Moshe was a Kohen, but only for the benefits, right? No restrictions. Because whenever it says Aaron or Bonav, Moshe is excluded. Moshe could remarry his divorcee. Moshe could become Tomei. We gave the answer. Tosis gave two answers by us. One of them is what Moshe oversaw the project; he never touched it. Another answer was Tosis said that tzaddikim don't give off tumah. That's the answer you like. Then we gave an answer that Yosef was considered a meis mitzvah, and the question is, would that have worked for the whole 40 years or only for the beginning? We said Yosef might have been considered as a melech. He was like a nasi. Right? And even if tzaddikim give off tumah, a kohen can still become tomei for the respect of the nasi. The shaila is, would that have lasted for 40 years or only the beginning? What else? We gave from Chaim Alpendari that Moshe's personal chumrah to be machmir before the Torah was given couldn't get in the way of his obligation to redeem the Jews. Now again, that would only help us until Matan Torah. And then we finally gave our answer that until the until the Torah was given, Moshe may have had to touch Yosef to get him out of the water and to move him. Let's say to put his bones into the body of the lamb that we saw in Tosfos Shans. But at that point, the Torah wasn't yet given. Moshe wasn't a kohen. The next 40 years, where was Yosef's body? Even if it was in Moshe's tent, it's still okay.
Because you don't touch
because it moved on its own.
Yeah.
The next 40 years, Moshe never touched it. That's what the Chizkuni and Tosfos Shans say. It moved on its own. Maybe he camped together with it in his tent, but Tosfos says in number 6 that anyone that died before Matan Torah doesn't give off tumah of oil. All right, that's some of the discussion. Interesting.
Beautiful, beautiful.